What is good, guys? How's everybody doing on their end? M.V.K here back again, and welcome to my Sinners movie review. Yes, guys, we are back with another movie review, and this is a review for a film that I was one of a must-see for 2025, and it was Sinners. My brother and I, we saw it on the day it was released. It was a good time. You know, me and my brother, sometimes we don't get enough time to go to the movies like we used to because both of us are busy at the time. So it was really good to go out and kick it with my little brother and go see this movie. And main and simple, let's get it right out there. Let's put it right out there, guys. Did I love this movie? Hell yeah, I did. And Ryan Coogler does it again with telling good story by also adding real world dynamics to also a supernatural effect. Now, I know I've seen comments of people saying they didn't like the real world aspect, and I'm looking at this, and anytime I heard somebody say that, I'm like, fool. You do know that this is 1930s Jim Crow era South. Did you not think that kind of was going to be in this? Your cast is primarily black. Did you not think that was going to happen? When I hear stuff like that, and it's not just from, whites and stuff like that, but when you hear from fellow blacks, you're like, where you from? Because me being from New York, I can tell you right now, my grandparents went through that. They were born in the South. Most of us who are from New York and Chicago and Detroit, Wisconsin, Cali, we probably have grandparents and older great uncles and that were from the South that grew up in there. When this movie came out, the date of this movie, I actually was thinking about it while I was watching. I was like, wow, my father's father, my grandfather, he was 13 during 1932. He was born 1919. And I'm like, man, my grandmother wasn't born yet. She was born five years later, but still, Ryan Coogler, not only did he do his homework in this, for this movie, it was just a really, really great story. And I love the dynamics. From Michael B. Jordan playing two roles, playing twins, Stack and Smoke from Haley Strattonfield playing a mixed race woman who more can pass for being white, and unfortunately I know that feeling because there are a lot of people in my family that on my father's side, especially from my grandmother's side and her sisters, that look very white and they can pass for white and things like that. And so I know that feeling too. You had Omar Miller in this movie, who, if you guys have ever watched CSI Miami, he was on that show and he was great as Cornbread. Legendary Leno in this movie as doing what he does best and killing it in a role. He always brings his A game in every role I've ever seen him, and he does a good job. And it's funny that he is playing in this movie that is talking about vampires, it has vampires, when he was definitely going to be in the Blade movie. And I think we all can agree he was going to play Jamal Afari, Blade's real mentor and who taught him to become a vampire on it. So that was very. And then we have who was in this movie as the titular hoodoo practice, not voodoo, hoodoo, playing Annie, she was great. I loved her in this movie. And what a surprise. No one should be surprised that though she is she is from the UK, she turned that southern drawl on very good. And all the other actors in this film were great. I love the fact that Ryan really went deep from being that this is in Mississippi, from including the indigenous tribe of that area, the Choctaw. If no one knows who those guys were, that tribe, the Choctaw, that's their land. That's Mississippi and New Orleans. That's Choctaw Nation. So I was very happy about that. Though I wanted more, I did want more of them, but we didn't get it. And then of course, them even bringing in Asian representation, which I think a lot of people didn't know, including myself. I had to really look that up. I looked that up, and that's what I loved about this movie, is Ryan showcased, like, this is stuff that you would not get in textbooks just from ordinary school. You got to look for it yourself. And there's a great documentary on that. There was, during the late 19th century, there was a flow of Chinese immigrants that immigrated to the South in the Mississippi Delta, and they were called the Mississippi Delta Chinese, and they did exactly what you saw in that Bo Chow and his wife were doing. They were the ones that would have mostly two stores, one for the whites and one for the blacks, and they helped integrate with blacks and had blacks would purchase stuff from them instead of purchasing it from whites, because of course we're talking Jim Crow era. So I really applaud Ryan for doing that. And then you talk about the overarching of the villain, and I'm gonna get to that real quick. Mr. O'Connor did a great job with that too. What I loved about it was how the pacing of the movie felt like it wasn't. You didn't really get to the supernatural side until later in the film, until everything started popping off. But everything from, you seeing Stax and Smoke and their different personalities, what Stack was about, you could tell them apart from the color they wore. We saw how they looked at their cousin Preacher Boy, which was his first role, so respects to that brother. It just felt like it was just almost gonna be like a southern dramatic movie where these two brothers are World War I vets. They left their hometown, came back from Chicago, and it even implies that they worked for Al Capone, or had some kind of dealings with the Capone family, mob family, and as well. And then they came back with a lot of money, they wanted to open up a juke joint. Once I saw they were purchasing this juke joint from, my mind was always like, yeah, this ain't gonna end well. I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna end well. And we were right? But I loved that it didn't just automatically go into the supernatural effect of the movie. Ryan did the proper antidote, the same thing Stephen King has always stated. You gotta love your cast. You have to love your cast. You got to get to know your cast, and you gotta like them. You can't just throw them into this film and then nobody likes them. So everybody played their part well, which I was loving. I love from the music. Oh my God, the music. The music, my God, is the most thrilling of that. And I am a fan of the blues. I do love the blues. So to hear that coming out, that was perfect. There's a scene, and I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. There's a scene where we get to see the past and the future combining into one during Preacher Boy's sermon. I love that. And that's when, of course, the supernatural effect come in. And that's where I actually liked it. The one thing that I also loved about, in terms of the once the vampires aspect starts coming in, we barely saw the vampires really like sink their teeth into somebody. And what I also liked about it also was interesting that Ryan went a different way with the vampires. For example, we saw bite marks on different body parts instead of just bite marks on the neck. Usually, what's the standard vampire lore? Here, neck, where the carotid artery meets. So we always expect a bite. But here we saw, there was Mary, who was played by Haley. She had a bite mark on her shoulder, things like that. You know, it was different for each victim. But of course, you know, the scenes that we loved, and of course the scenes like they were. The other thing about this film that you cannot deny is just how horny everybody was in this film. They put that right out there, no doubt about it. They would showcase it, and I'm just like, damn, Ryan. I'm like, okay. I'm like, damn, Ryan. Okay. Oh yeah, he's going down. Yep. Oh yep. You know, it was just stuff like that. And when Remrick came in, played by I think it's Ryan O'Connell, I believe his name, who did a great job. It was really interesting to me because once he started, I was really interesting to see like, okay, what is his purpose? Why is he doing this? And you know, is it just because but the way he went about it was very interesting, you know, especially when, you know, I like the fact of his eyes being red. Like you would see his eyes red at times. He had like longer claws at one point. But I thought there was going to be like a different form to him. That was something that I was a little disappointed. I was like, okay, maybe he has a different like vampiric form. And you know, was he really the villain? I would say somewhat, because he was using vampirism as a means of breaking the cycle of racism, in a sense, or discrimination. And that's when you kind of get the understanding, okay, Remick is older than he looks. And that was always the key. That was something I picked up on, and I was like, man, I wonder how like old he is, like, because that was something I was to ask my brothers. I said it to him while I was like, I wonder if he's older than he is. Is he just a southern vampire that got bit maybe, you know, a couple of days ago, or is he older than he looked? And when you start hearing him talk, and of course when they started playing the Irish folk music, which that one song that they were playing in that film is probably one of the most well-known Irish folk song I know and loved. And the first time I actually heard that song was actually in Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law's Sherlock Holmes movie. That was the first time I heard it, and I loved it there. I was like, oh, that's nice. So, and yes, I do like Irish folk music, so it was really cool to hear. But like I said, the way they showcased how people got bitten. Some bit in the neck. Not saying that was because Mary bit. You know, she went for the neck. And the whole drooling, I was like, oh, what the hell? Like, stuff like that really kind of was like, ugh. But I loved how they really played up the final act of, okay, these are the survivors. Now we have to survive. And I love how Annie, she was the know-it-all of what these people, what they were. Like she did not even hesitate to say, no, they're not this. No, they're vampires. And she's telling them, okay, this is how we have to deal with them. Steaks and silver, garlic and a crucifix. Like I love that Annie was that, because people were saying, I've seen a lot of people saying voodoo. No, she said hoodoo. There is a different practitioner, not voodoo, hoodoo. And I love that she was the one that was getting people on board. And like, you know, like when one of the twins got bit and he turned and he came out, and then next you know, she threw the garlic, like and things like that. Or even when Haley got, and she came up with the whole, we gonna kill all y'all, like, and she just ran out. I was like, I'll see you later. I'm like, I'm like, okay. But I did like how everything flowed, and I love that end scene of how it ended. I know a lot of people have given, I'm forgetting her name, Bo's wife, a lot of grief on, letting the vampires in. I will say that I have to I have to put my own on that. I hate that. I hate that people are pissed off about that. She was a mother. And if you remember in those scenes, what did Remick and Bo tell her? Basically saying, they told her, maybe we should go pay a visit to Lisa, their daughter. And let's be real. If Bo had came to the door and said, Lisa, honey, let daddy in, what would have happened? And to Lisa, that was something. So I never questioned that she let them in, and I love that she went out like a G. She took Bo with them, her husband with her, which I like. But I love that Ryan put the emphasis on the old vampire lore of they have to be invited in. I hate movies, vampire movies, where they just throw the whole lore of vampires out the window. I hate that. I do. I hate that a lot. Whether it's they're not affected by sunlight or something. Unless you're a damn fire where you're half vampire, half human, you shouldn't be. If you're a full-blood vampire, you shouldn't be able to do that. That's why I don't like Twilight. I fucking hate that. So when you mess with vampire lore like that, I got a problem with it. So I love that Ryan pulled that and said, yeah, they still have to be invited in. And when that went down, the fight went down, I loved it. That was fun. The final act I love seeing, I think it was Smoke or Stat. I think it was Smoke or Stat. Taking out them fucking clan man. I love that, and I loved him using his military and just mowing them down. He went straight Punisher on them, and like I don't care too much for Nazis, and I don't care too much for Klansmen. So to see them get their asses mowed over was great. And to me, he had a very happy ending because he was reunited with the woman he loved and his child. So I love that. I love that moment. And then, of course, seeing the surviving member of the family as well as the cast, basically move on with his life and still want to play music and things like that. And I love the end credit. I'm not going to talk about that too much because if you want me to talk about that, you can talk about that in the comment section. But it was nice to see that over 60 years have passed, and they looking like they're from the time, and they're still, we see why they survived. So that was fun. There were problems I had with the film, and one of the problems I had with the film is the vampires in general. They were weak. Even to some degree, Remick was weak. They were weak vampires. They were like gunfire can knock them down, and they felt it, and they were like, oh, okay. They weren't that strong. What do we hear about vampires? They're super strong. They're, of course, longevity. We saw that. Everything like that. Their strength, they can hypnotize, all that stuff. But here, it wasn't shown. Like they were, even when they were invited in, even mostly the crew, the surviving members, they were holding themselves down in that final act, and I'm like, whoa. And then of course, and I'm like, they're not very strong. I kept saying, I'm like, they're not very strong. Every vampire movie I've seen, like, they're vampires, like they could just do that and you go flying. I guess Ryan was trying to, I guess he wanted to give the cast maybe an even playing field, because like I said, even Remick was not as strong. He did some things, like you can see, like he can fly or jump and things like, but there were parts where like he got shot and I was like, well, he's down for a while. but the healing process and everything like that, I enjoyed. But there were things I was like, they're not very strong. They're not very strong. And that was something I nitpicked at, and that's a nitpick. But I have to bring that up. They were not very strong. But the film was just everything I wanted. And I know there's a lot of us that want maybe more of this world than what, like, for example, like I talked about it with a couple of people not too long ago who saw it too, and I was like, I would love a prequel to see who bit Remick, you know, just when he got bit and who turned him, you know, because to me he's got to be over 600 years old, because the way he was talking, and he was talking about the English, and I'm like, and I'm guessing he was Irish, so I'm thinking, okay, when did the English invade Ireland? And I remember, if I remember correctly, it was like 1196. So I'm like, okay, you know, things like that. I was before Christianity and all that stuff, so I was really trying to remember a lot of that stuff. And even with Mary, and I was like, and I'm like, okay, what did they do over the 60 years? So there are parts of me that was like, I would really like to know what it was like for those 60 years after the effects in 1932, and you know, things like that. But you know, if it's just a one-off, great. But you know, my crazy geek mind thinks like that, and I'm like, okay, what is it like? But outside of that, this was a grand movie. I loved it, and if you don't find something that you like about this movie, or you think it's overhyped, you are smoking, because it was everything you wanted it to be, and then more, you know what I'm saying? And I loved it. I really did. I'm definitely gonna go see it again. I think I'm gonna go see it in IMAX, because I didn't see it in IMAX. I heard people have said go see it in IMAX, especially with the music, and it'll play better. But I loved it very much. I loved it, and I definitely want to go see it again. It was a must-see for me, and I got to see it. And if you saw it, guys, you tell me in the comment section below, what did you think of the film? If you didn't see it, I hope I didn't spoil too much for you. I tried not to. But at the end of the day, if you are not a vampire fan, then 50-50, it may not be for you. But if you love vampires and you want to see a period piece vampire film then this is for you. Trust me. But outside of that, guys, you guys take care. I will see you guys next time. There will be more reviews for movies coming. I know, of course, yes, Thunderbolts is coming out soon, or whenever this video goes up, whether it's up or not. Will I go see it? Most likely I will. But you got some more down the road. Look out for them, guys, okay? And with that being said, you guys take care. Deuces.